It was one of the main hospitals of the Belgian industrial city of Charleroi. Hôpital Saint-Joseph was opened all the way back in 1869 as a coal miners' hospital. Since then, much has happened, such as multiple wars and the disappearance of heavy industry. But at the end of 2024, it was closed down, preserving much of the interior. Powered operation theaters and working morgues were all intact and abandoned. In this episode, we are venturing inside this massive hospital to uncover what remains in the large building. We started at our entrance, an open window. This wasn't the main building yet, but instead one of the most modern extensions of the hospital complex. Before heading to the central part, we had to scout for possible cameras or sensors inside the building. Power was also still active here, which could make things a bit more sketchy. The hospital seemed rather empty, with not much furniture left. We wanted to head over to a more interesting part. Which meant we had to move further up the building to eventually make our way into the main section. On the third floor, we went through the old, also emptied out lab into the original building. This part seemed a lot older and much more eerie. With the power on, we could hear all sorts of distant sounds, unsure whether they were people or just machines still running.
Het zou bijna ook een brandalarm kunnen zijn, waarbij de batterijen op zijn.
We decided to head all the way up to the highest level, to eventually make our way down again. We found one of our main objectives, the operating rooms.
Fucking hell, jongen. Ik schrok me helemaal kapot, jongen. Ja, ik nieste ook.
So indeed, it seemed everything still operated, including the automatic doors. We arrived at a block full of operating rooms. The systems inside the rooms were still operational. It felt like stepping inside an apocalypse-like scene. All sorts of advanced systems could be activated, such as ventilations and alarms. So we decided not to try too many buttons. Similar to the rest of the hospital, much had already been cleared out, such as operating beds and some lamps. This area was part of the latest addition, built in the late 1980s, according to the newest regulations. We explored this hospital back in March of 2025, but just a couple of months prior, the hospital was still completely full of equipment. But this was already gone, unfortunately. It was the end of an era for this hospital, the final period just before demolition. The story of the hospital goes back to the 1860s, when Charleroi was developing as a coal mining town. Rapid growth followed, making it one of the fastest growing areas in Europe. On the terrain, a small medical bay was founded, run by a religious institution. But within just a few years, a full hospital was opened. A lot of capacity was needed, as the work in the mines was extremely dangerous, needing emergency care often. And so the hospital began to grow, adding more capacity year after year. We returned to head deeper into the building. We made our way to the resting wards of the intensive care unit. Here, patients recovered after undergoing surgery. It was a long corridor, all empty. These places are always a bit eerie and desolate. Racks attached to the ceiling were the only thing remaining in many of the rooms. They once held monitoring equipment next to the patients. While filming, a car drove onto the terrain. It seemed to be security, stopping right next to the main entrance. We had the feeling we might have triggered some alarm without noticing it. But luckily, after a while, it drove off again. So we were seemingly lucky, but it was clear that the hospital was still being checked. We decided to move on to the lower floors. After a short while, we came across a small 2-story chapel. The room was quite distinct, not yet seen in such a style inside the hospital. It's probably part of the original structure, not renovated since the 1970s. The stained glass let in a warm yellow light into the quiet chapel. Although it was also emptied, not long ago it still had benches inside. In the 1970s, the existing hospital was expanded with new wings, including the one we were in now. Besides this, it was also integrated into the existing network of Charleroi hospitals, streamlining operations. This was needed due to the situation in Charleroi, which was in a dire state. Industries such as coal and steel were leaving town, shutting down rapidly. With people leaving as well, the hospitals had to become more efficient to save money. But even in this state, the hospital continued operating, offering quality healthcare for the region. We arrived at our next point of interest, located on the main floor. It was the morgue of the hospital, all in perfect condition. This is the autopsy table, made from cold stainless steel. Here, bodies were examined to determine the cause of death. One can only imagine how many people must have lain here on this table. Right next to it, we entered the body storage area. 2 types of storage were located here. One for the entire stretchers and the other small chambers for individual bodies. It gives a unique insight into how the atmosphere is inside these morgues. The true ending for many people's lives. We wanted to check the riskiest area, the main entrance. This was risky because it was probably also where security would enter the building. It seemed quiet so far, but it wasn't as interesting as we expected. We hoped for a much larger and more grand entrance. Although we found a small office filled with documents and drawings of this hospital, likely concept art from when the hospital was being designed. A cool artifact from the beginnings of the hospital story. A story that has now ended. The reason this hospital closed is simple. It moved into a brand new state-of-the-art facility. The new hospital combined all separate hospitals into one big one, centralizing healthcare once again. And so the story ends for Hôpital Saint-Joseph. Today the building is heavily guarded, with a massive fence and active security inside. In the near future, most of the hospital will be demolished to make place for housing.